right, Rex? All right. So, all right, let's jump into this. What we need to do, and I've said this many times, Ephesians, Paul writes his letters in a certain way. All right? Ephesians, Romans, and Colossians are the best example of this. All right? What he does, he starts off by saying, God has done all of these things. All right? We call them indicative verbs. All right? God did this, God did this, God did this, God did this. Okay? And then he hits a point, he goes, okay, that's enough of what God has done. Now, in light of this, or therefore, you see this, you'll see this, I'll show it to you a couple of times. Therefore, you are expected to do this, 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 and this. Not demanded. Let's be real clear on this. All right? One person in the Bible was told, you will be in heaven with me today. And what did he do? What demand did he meet as far as behavior and morals? Nothing. He was a little tied up. All right? He couldn't do anything. All right? That's the one person that Jesus told point blank, you will be in heaven. So if you think you have to fulfill these check boxes all the way down, that's how you get into heaven. Let's be clear on this. That's not how you get into heaven. You get into heaven by saying thank you. That's it. And then the rest of your life is fleshing out that thank you, okay? So let's don't get hung up on that. Let's right on top of the bat, all right? So he goes in Ephesians, he does this real cleanly, all right? First 3 chapters is God did this, okay? And then the next 3 chapters of, now this is what you should do. Romans, we see this is 1 through 11, all right? And then 12 starts off with, therefore present your bodies as living sacrifices. Colossians is a little goofier. I don't know why they broke it up this way, but it's basically 10 verses into chapter 3, we get this, therefore you should live this way, okay? But this is the rhythm in those 3 letters specifically, and the others they're a little more meshed up, okay? So as we read through Ephesians, and we've gone through this, all right, we start off with chapter 1, and the first thing out of the box is he says, praiseworthy is the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who's done what? Given us every spiritual blessing in the heavens. There is nothing left that you need spiritually from God. He has given you everything, and he gave it to you through the cross. We know that, right? So he is praiseworthy. And then he goes into a list of, here's all the things he's done. What's he done? He chose us to be holy and blameless. That's a good thing, right? Anybody need a little holiness and blamelessness interjected into their life? Or have y'all all just sort of shown up and go, hey, no thanks, Jesus. I got mine. I'm good. I'm holy. I'm blameless in your sight. Anybody in that club? No? Okay, so we all needed that. So we should probably cherish that, because when we stand before God, God's going to look at us and go, how did you do? I go, I didn't do well. All right, just got to admit it. Didn't do well. He goes, that's okay. See that cross? I see you through that cross, and you are holy and blameless in my sight. Now, enter into the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the earth. If you aren't in alignment with the cross, he will say, depart from me, I never knew you, into eternal punishment prepared for the devil and his angels, not you. And I've said this many times, you're going to have to crawl over me to go to hell, because I'm going to tell you again and again and again how to avoid it. And the blessing and the true spiritual blessing God gave us when he chose us to be holy and blameless and died to make that a reality. But he didn't just stop there, right? He didn't just say, okay, I'll get you out of hell, but then you're on your own. No, what does he do? He predestined us to be adopted as sons and daughters. That's a whole nother level, right? God gets us out of hell. All right, thanks, but you're still like a horrible person. I really don't want to have a whole lot to do with you, but I'll get you out of hell. But I'm not inviting you into my house, all right? I don't love you that much, but God does. He says, I'm not just going to save you from hell. I'm going to adopt you as sons and daughters. Come sit at the table. Come enjoy all that I am. You are now a part of me. He gave us an inheritance. The text says he lavished grace on us. He didn't just go, I'll give you a little. I'll give you a little. He lavished this grace on us and sealed us with the Holy Spirit. So Paul says, God, give them a spirit of wisdom and revelation so that they can know me, so they can know how much I love them. They can know how much that cross changed everything for them. Just give them that spirit so they can know. And may the eyes of their heart be open so they can perceive how much I love them. And what is the greatness of the hope of the calling I've placed on their life, and the riches of the inheritance, and the greatness of my power, the power that raised Christ up from the dead. It's also the power that saved me and raised me up from the dead. And we say this every week, or I say it every week. We don't come here to sit here and learn Bible verses. We come here to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's why we meet on Sundays. We don't do Saturday night worship around here. I got no problem with churches that do that. That's their thing. My church, under my leadership, is going to meet on Sunday morning. You know why? Because we've come here to celebrate the resurrection of Christ, and that happened on Sunday morning. That's why we meet right now. You see, because you were saved from the wrath of God by God's grace. He just loves you that much, and he proved it at the cross. It's not anything you've done, nothing you've done. Now, Paul has to deal with a little sort of inside baseball thing here. He's got a little mix in his church here in Ephesus. You see, half the church was Jewish people, and they're going, yeah, this is the Messiah we've all been waiting for. And the other half of the church was Gentiles, all right? And I had to look this up this week. I went, where did the word Gentile come from? Well, it just means we get our word genetics from this. So you have Jewish people and you have other, all right? You have Jewish people and you have other. Well, for the Romans had Romans and they had other, right? Greeks, other. Gentile just means other. It just means the ones who weren't in the thing at the beginning, all right? And Paul says, you're not going to believe this, Jewish people and Gentile people. Y'all are all meant to go together. And God broke down the wall of hostility for you and made this whole new man, and he saved all of us through the cross. He says, now God, just give them the ability to understand how much I love them. God, just give them this ability. Give them the strength to tackle this thing down, to wrestle it down so they can know how much I love them. And we said last week or 2 weeks ago, he will be glad to give you this knowledge. The only question is, how will you receive it? And we looked at the parables, a parable of the sower and the soil. There's that fall on the path. Those people that walk in the room and hear the gospel message and fold their arms and close their minds and go, that's not for me. And you are the people who are going to crawl over me to get into hell. Because I'm telling you the message. I'm telling you the good news that you do not have to go to hell. You do not have to be separated from a God that loves you more than you could ever imagine, because he's made the provision through the cross. Then the rocky soil, the shallow soil, the roots just can't take on, and it gets destroyed by persecution from inside and from outside. The thorny soil, weeds and the thorns, they choke out the life. Imagine what keeps you out of this building on Sunday morning to celebrate the resurrection of Christ. What keeps you out of here? What keeps you off of your knees? What keeps your mind distracted away from the things of God on a daily basis? Those are the weeds. Some of you need to do some cleaning up in the garden. Because life, this wonderful life that you're chasing down, is choking out your understanding, love, and relationship with the God that saved you. And you're going to get to the end of your days, and you're going to have titles and land and cars and whatever, and that'll be it. But you will not have God. So Paul prays, God, give them this knowledge. And then he turns the page here in chapter 4. Let's begin reading here, 4:1. It says, "Therefore, I, the prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk worthy of the calling you have received, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, accepting one another in love, diligently keeping the unity of the Spirit with the peace that binds us. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope at your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in all." All right? So did you see how we started there? Therefore, everybody see that in 4:1? All right? What does that do? I mean, think just grammatically, think English, whatever. All right? Some of you speak English, right? Moderately. All right? You see therefore, and what happens? You have to look back and go, okay, he's just said something. What has he said for the last 3 chapters? Doctrine, 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 right? Therefore, he's going to transition to say, in light of all that, now you become this. He does this several times. I want you to see a couple of these occasions. All right? Go to Acts. Hold your place there in Ephesians. Come over here to Acts 27. Do a little bit of sword drill here. Acts 27 in verse 34. Now you got to understand, this is during they're out at sea. He's trying to get to Rome. The ship has gone crazy. The winds have gone crazy. Everything's going wrong, and everything is bad, all right? And he comes to the point in time where they have to throw over all the gear and everything. And he gets to this in 27 in verse 34. I'll start reading in 33. When it was about daylight, Paul urged them all to take food, saying, "Today is the 14th day you've been waiting and going without food." Anybody fasting for 2 weeks here? On a boat? I do the seasickness thing really well, all right? You put me on a boat that does this, and then don't let me eat for 14 days. Don't worry, there ain't nothing left in there to throw up at that point, if you're with me, all right? We did a mission trip on nice yachts. I mean, like 4 or 5 bedroom yachts. They took us across the Straits of Florida in winter. Doing this to get the 2 hours across the Bahamas, there was throw up everywhere. It was ugly, all right? I ain't lying. I don't know why I just told that story, but yeah, I've had 5 days to prepare for this sermon, so just get ready. 34. Therefore, I urge you. Does that sound familiar? Paul says this a lot. Therefore, I urge you. I urge you to what? To take some food. You haven't eaten in 14 days. Things are calming down. We're going to get out of this. Therefore, I urge you to take some food, for this has to do with your survival, since none of you will lose a hair from your head. All right? Come over here to Romans 12. Next book over. I just want you to see this pattern, because Paul is so encouraging. Paul is desiring people to move somewhere. It says, therefore, and like I said, the Ephesians is 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6. Romans is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 through 16. All right? So in 12, we have this transition, same idea. Therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, I urge you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual worship. That word should be logical. This is just your logical worship. In light of 1 through 11, present your bodies as living sacrifice. It's just logical. It's literally the word logikon in the Greek, which we get our word logical from. All right? Keep coming over. 1 Corinthians 4. Again, I just want to see Paul's pattern here. 1 Corinthians 4 in verse 16. I'm going to start in 14. It says, I am not writing this to shame you, Corinthians, but to warn you as my dear children. For you can have 10,000 instructors in Christ, but you can't have many fathers. For I became your father in Christ Jesus through the gospel. Therefore, I urge you to imitate me. Again, we have this pattern. This word urge, therefore I urge you, is the word parakaleo, which means to come next to you and invite you, to call out to you. It's the word from the Beatitudes, which blessed are those who mourn, for they will be what? Comforted. comforted, urging. It's the exact same work. This is the Holy Spirit, the paraclete, all right? Same word, all right? He comes in and he encourages you. He urges you. He challenges you. He dares you. So you see this pattern. So as he finishes out the whole doctrine of what God has done, for by grace you have been saved from what? Louder? Wrath, thank you, all right? That's a good thing, right? Anybody want the wrath of God on them? Anybody like, it couldn't be that bad, right? Read Revelation, all right? The wrath of God is on you, but Christ saved you from it. Why? Why in the world would God save Bobby from the wrath of God? Because he likes him. Why? Because Bobby right here, Bobby Boyce, in our church is tied for the most amazing creature God has ever put on this planet. And he's tied with you. You are tied for number one of the most amazing person God ever put on this planet. Haley, do you believe that? It's cool to know that, isn't it? It's like, wow, me, I'm tied for number one. All right? Therefore, I urge you to do what? Look at this. To walk worthy of the calling to which you were called. What is that? What's this calling to which I was called? I say it's real simple. It's that cross. When Christ died on that cross, he called you into a new way of life. You are called. The cross proclaims to all of us, you are loved, you are cherished, now you can come be a part of me. Paul's already written, he broke down the hostility that existed between God and humanity. This sin created hostility. When somebody breaks your rules, when somebody violates you, in some way turns against you, it creates hostility, right? Right? And that can be devastating. But Christ in the cross does what? He brings you together. It's called reconciliation, to bring us back together to him. And he did this for us. This is the calling he has placed. And so he calls out from that cross, come to me, all who are weary. Come, find your rest right here. Find a relationship. Find a cessation of hostility. Find peace with me. So we want to walk worthy of this calling to which you were called. How? Look at the text. Look at the text. Y'all back in Ephesians 4? Let me read it again. Therefore I, the prisoner for the Lord, literally the prisoner for the Lord, because where's he writing this from? He's writing this from a Roman prison cell, all right, with a guard attached to one of his arms, all right? Literally. It's so funny. He says, all the prison guards are kind of watching over my shoulder to see what I'm writing, and they're taking it back to their headquarters, and they're sharing the message of the gospel of Christ. He says, so I'm going to keep writing because they can keep reading, all right? You got to read through the lines, read between the lines, but it's there. Therefore, I, the prisoner for the Lord, urge you. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. I'm pleading with you. I'm parakaleoing to you. I'm right next to you, calling out to you. I'm begging you. I'm urging you to walk worthy of this calling with all humility and gentleness. These things work together. I want to kind of demonstrate this idea of humility. Humility is the Greek word tapiainos. Everybody say tapiainos. Come on, Court, say it with me. Tapiainos. All right. Tapiainos, it means I got nothing, all right? It's one of those moments of, yeah, I got nothing, okay? I have no strength. I have no ability. I have no material possessions. I'm nothing. I'm broke. I'm tapiainos. I have absolutely not one thing to bring to the table. And isn't that how most of us are? We think we are this. We think we have this. We think we have these abilities and this and this. Really, in the grand scheme of things, how important are you? How much can you bring to the table? How much wealth can you bring to the table? All right? Who wants to solve the national debt? It's only $21 trillion, I think, at some point. How many empty out your bank account? Oh, okay, we fixed it. We fixed it now, all right? It's all good. No. All of us are so small. And yet we think of ourselves as being so big. And Paul says what you need to walk worthy of the calling of that cross is to just humble yourself. I say my definition of humility is this. It's real simple. It's a proper perspective on reality. I know who I am. I'm a speck of dust on this planet. I have some abilities. I have some giftings that God has given me. God gave me the ability to teach people. That's all I'm good at. I can just teach people, and I want to do the best I can with that. But at the end of the day, how consequential am I really going to be? And I've got to be okay with that. Because when I'm okay with it, I have this humility about myself. So I don't puff myself up. I don't try and make myself any more of that. Because what happens to that when someone does that in a group dynamic like a church family? What happens when one person kind of peacocks a little bit? What happens to the unity? What happens to the body at that point? No. Well, what if we all come in here? And again, I say it's a proper perspective on reality. Some of you think humiliation is written in the Bible. That's not, Paul doesn't say be humiliated. He said be humble. Humble is a proper perspective on reality. So don't come in here with your, well, I'm no good and God can't use me and blah, blah, blah. Because God's going, kind of my art, you're my art project. You're my poema, my poem I've written. I've instilled so much beauty in you. So that's a proper perspective on reality. You don't get too high, you don't get too low. You just show up and go, here I am. I got a lot of junk. I'm good at this, this, and this, but here I am. How can I be a part of this group? That's humility. And you don't apologize for it, and you don't make excuses for it. You just say, look, this is all I got, and here it is. I'm here to serve. Now, gentleness is the flip side of this thing, all right? So you get people in who are just sort of, you know what, I ain't too proud. I ain't better than anybody else. I'm just here. I want to be a part of the group and do what I can. Bring what I've got to the table, all right? Gentleness, and anybody else translation say meekness? With meekness? This is the word. It's a Greek word, protes. Protes is the idea of a horse under control, all right? You think a horse, a wild horse, try hopping on that wild horse. How's that going to work out for you? That's not going to work out real well for you. Anybody want to ride that wild horse, that Mustang that you just captured in the wild? You go, oh yeah, I'll just ride this horse to town. No, you won't, okay? You will be flying. But when you get this power under control, now you can do something. And what if we saw that here's my strengths? What if I got those under control so that they help for the good of everybody? It was said of Moses that he was the most meek man to have ever lived. You know who wrote that? Moses did. Numbers 12, go check it out. Man, Moses was the meekest man to have ever lived. Yes, I am, meek as I am. That's me, Moses. All right? But what was the occasion? Miriam and Aaron were challenging his leadership based on this wife that he chose. And he could have stepped up and just crushed them because God had put him in charge, not them. But yet, what does he do? He goes and talks with them. He prays for him. He says, God, we're not moving until Miriam is healed. His power was under control, okay? So we need people in the church, we need to have a humility about ourselves. But you know what? There are some people who have greatness to them, have abilities, have strength and all this stuff. But what happens when they step up and go, well, I'm the best at this, so everybody has to follow me? What happens to the group dynamics at that point? Working out real well? Everybody's like, what's Bob doing, all right? No one wants to follow that. So you see this humility works with this power under control. Jesus tells a parable, or it gives instructions to people. It says, when you go into a banquet, where should you sit? Where should you sit? Y'all remember this? What does Jesus tell them specifically? When you go into a banquet, where should you sit? You should sit as far back as you can, Jamie, right? Sit in the humblest place you can. Just sit there. And if they want to move you up, they'll come get you and say, why are you sitting way back here in the back? We have a seat of honor for you. But if you run into the room and sit right there at the table where everybody gets to get up first and get their food first at the wedding, right? Y'all remember this one, all right? Because you're hungry, because you've been sitting there all day, all right? What happens when someone of greater honor comes in the room? Hey, bud, that's for the groomsmen. Why are you sitting here? We don't even know who you are. You snuck into this wedding. Go back to the back. You see, it's this balance. I love it that Paul writes in Romans 12 when he's talking about being a living sacrifice. He says, get carried away with the humble. It's literally the idea of, you know what? Go sit with the humble people. Go sit at that table at the wedding, all right? The one in the way back that they kind of went, oh, yeah, let's pencil in Uncle Bob and Aunt Frida and all this stuff because they're just they're weird, all right? Let's get them as far away. Go sit with Aunt Frida and have a blast at the wedding. But that takes gentleness because our natural inclination in group dynamics to do what? Get as far as we can to the place of honor. Don't find humility. Don't find meekness. And what happens? We miss out. The group dynamics get all screwed up. You see, we are to walk worthy of the calling to which you were called with all humility and gentleness. I love this because I love to talk about the hero. What does the hero do? The hero finds an opportunity and he has a courage, but he loves the person enough to go and do something amazingly beautiful. You know why? Because what does the hero think of himself? Is the hero going, well, I'm a very important person. I don't know that I should be the one making this sacrifice. I see the opportunity, but do you know who I am? I'm a big MASH guy. Anybody else a big MASH guy? We got the Hulu thing. We did the whole Fire Stick. We're doing all that. We did away with the dish. So I'm like 24/7 watching MASH, all right? My family loves it, all right? But see, anybody else grow up with MASH? All right? Love it. Love it. Winchester. Y'all, those of you who don't watch MASH, just take 5 minutes off, all right? Those of you that are with me, you're with me. Winchester. What does he do? Every time he walks around, well, you know I went to Harvard. You know I went to Harvard. You know how important I am. You know how my family is this. You know how I shouldn't be the one to sacrifice because there are other people who are not as nearly as important as me. What's happened to his humility? And what happens to the group dynamics? You see, the beauty is the hero sees themselves as nothing, as expendable. Doesn't this fall right in line with deny yourself? The hero is always the one who sees themselves as expendable, but sees the one who they're loving on as infinitely valuable. Who sees the other person as someone who is actually tied for being the greatest thing God ever put on this planet. Humility and gentleness, they work together. The next one is what? The easy one, right? With patience. Anybody ever pray for patience? Not twice. You go, I learned that lesson. Don't pray for patience. God will surely give it to you. All right? Look at how he explains it, though. Look at this. Okay, so I'm going to start over again. 4:1. Therefore, I, the prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk worthy of the calling you were called, to which you were called. That's a better translation. All right? With all humility and gentleness, with patience, and he describes what it's going to look like. Accepting one another in love. That sounds very nice, doesn't it? Oh, I accept you. I accept you. That's not what this word should be translated as, all right? That's far too nice. Accepting is such a nice, polite word, all right? Because how many of you, with patience, accept one another? I'm just going to patiently accept all that you've done. That's not how this word should be. It should be translated as tolerate. Anybody a parent of teenagers? You understand? We just tolerate you people, all right? Because eventually you're going to take care of us, all right? So you're driving us crazy 99% of the time, and we tolerate you with patience, with great patience. Mark, Anna, it's coming. It's coming. It's just right around the corner, all right? Jim, Amy, it's there. It's almost there, all right? But look at this, with patience. Macrothumos, long suffering. That's what the word means. It's not my translation. Macro, long, thumos, to suffer. I will suffer long with patience, accepting one another in love, in agape. It really is the word tolerate here. Jesus comes down from the Mount of Transfiguration, meets the crowd. Everybody's gathered around this dad whose son is demon-possessed. And the disciples can't cast out the demons like they did earlier when Jesus gave them the ability to do this. The religious leaders are fighting. They're challenging the disciples. It's just chaos going on. And Jesus comes down from this glorious moment of turning white as white could be. And visiting with Moses and Elijah, he comes down on the hill, comes into this mess, this chaos, and he says what? Rex, what does he say? How long do I have to stay here with you? That's Jesus saying that. Right here, same word. How long do I have to tolerate this? Y'all are driving me crazy. And yet that's exactly what Paul says. With patience, even though they are driving you crazy, you tolerate, you accept, you bring them in, you have them in your midst. Literally, that's a literal translation. You have them in your midst because you love them. And who's he speaking to? All of us. I've been looking all week for an exception to this. I didn't find one. Who am I supposed to tolerate, accept, have in my midst with patience? Everyone that I love. Who am I supposed to love? I've said this a long time. The standard for the person to which you are supposed to love is, do they have a beating heart? End of discussion. Imagine being in a church family where you can walk into the room and everyone in the room will patiently accept, tolerate you because they just love you that much. What could you not confess in that moment? What could you not confess in that environment? What could you bring into the room that people would go, that's it, never mind. That's too long of suffering. We can't accept you because our love stops right here. Aren't you glad his didn't? Aren't you glad his didn't have a stopping point of, oh, well, never mind. That's way too much. I can't deal with that. But ours does. You see, we are to walk worthy of the calling on that with patience, accepting one another because we just love them. And so whatever they bring into the room, we go, we can handle that. You know why? Because agape love never fails. It never has a moment where he says, that's too much. You can bring whatever you need to bring into our midst, and we will love you through it. We will accept you into this, and we will fight with you, and we will pray with you, and we will sit with you, and we will cry with you, and we will do anything and everything we can. But you're not getting away from us. You're ours. You're with us now. Church, can you imagine the beauty of being able to come in here and put your junk on the table and us just go, we love you anyway. We cherish you anyway. You are still tied for the most amazing thing God ever put on this planet, and we love having you here. Wouldn't you want to be a part of a church like that? The first thing we did as elders last year, I said, guys, we're going to show up. We're not going to do business. We're going to tell our stories, and we're going to put all of our junk on the table. I said, don't come half junked. Come full junked. And the 6 of us, the 6 men of our church, the leaders of our church, put all of our junk on the table. and we accepted one another, and we still accept one another because we love each other. That's how your elders wanted to start 2020. You can see how that went, all right? Let's keep going. With patience, diligently keeping the unity of the Spirit with the bonds of peace. I don't like the word diligently here. It's not an adverb in the text. It's not describing how you should do this. It's describing the motion. It's the word spudomai. All right, everybody say spudomai. See, you speak Greek. Spudomai. We get our word speed from this. So we want to do things in a hurry, okay? So look at this in the text. All right? With all humility and gentleness, with patience, accepting one another in love. Come on in. We got you because we love you. We love you. Doesn't matter what you put on the table. We're going to love you anyway, all right? Diligently keeping the unity. Let me translate it this way. Rushing to keep the oneness we have in the Spirit. Rushing to keep. It's the word speed. We want to do it speedily. Speeding to keep this, to protect this. All right? You get the zookeeper. What does the zookeeper do? He keeps the zoo. All right? He protects the zoo. He's there to fight off all the bad kids who are throwing popcorn at the monkeys or whatever, right? He's the zookeeper. He protects everything. So we want to rush to this. Why? How many of you grew up and you'd be outside playing, which generally means you're 25 and older, right? Because if you're younger than 25, you grew up doing this inside. Right, Chancellor? You're outside playing, and you hear it in the distance. What do you hear? Pling, 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 pling. The ice cream man is coming. What happens to the kickball game? What happens to the fort you're building? What happens to you playing outside when you hear the ice cream truck coming? Everybody drops everything, runs as fast as humanly possible into their house, grabs quarters, grabs nickels, grabs whatever, and runs with all their might towards the ice cream man. Still do. Amen. Why? Imagine if you ran like that to keep the oneness that we have as a church body. Jesus told them this in the Sermon on the Mount. If someone has something against you, something legitimately against you, leave your offering and run. Go fix it. Why? Because that's the beauty of the dynamics of the church. Some of you sit back for a while and go, I don't know. I don't know if they're worth me forgiving. I don't know if that relationship is worth it. I don't know. And I do this too, because trust me, I'm pretty introverted, okay? So it's hard for me to just rush to things because I'm like, oh, okay, I've got to do it. Okay, I got to go, all right? But wouldn't this be a beautiful thing if we became the people who rushed into the moments, who saw another person who's tied to being the most amazing person God ever put on this planet, and we said they are hurting and they are in need, and they need my forgiveness, and they need my restoration. And you saw an opportunity, and you had the courage to love that person. Now, what are you? You're the hero of the story. This is what he's calling us to rush to this. The word worthy in this sentence. Therefore, I urge you to walk worthy of the calling to which you were called. The word worthy is a Greek word axios. All right? Any math people in the room? Andy, you don't teach math, do you? No. That look. All right. Anybody mathy person? Do I need you a little bit? Anybody teach algebra? Anybody remember algebra? You had axioms. What's on one side of the equation has to equal to what's on the other side, right? Worthy means what Christ did for me, I need to put my works on the other side of this thing and make them equal out. What did Christ do for you? What did Christ do for you? He gave you grace. He just loves you. Why? You're a horrible human being most of the time, right? Selfish, gossiping, all this stuff, and yet he loves you anyway. He adores you. He cherishes you. You are tied for the most amazing thing God ever put on this planet. And his grace for you led him to forgive you and to hold nothing against you. At what cost? At the cost of the cross. Now, what's on the other side of that equation? Is that how you live? Are you accepting one another in love? Patiently accepting one another in love? You rush. You can't. Some of you should be sitting here right now going, Bub, I got to go. I've got to get out of this room right now because I need to call somebody and tell them how much I love them and tell them I forgive them and tell them I'm sorry. Some of you just need to rush out of this room, but you're not because you're polite little people who grew up in Texas, all right? And you're waiting for that guy to stop preaching so I can get up and go rush to go make peace. Please, go if you need to go. But we got to balance this thing out. We can't call ourselves Christians when we have this example of Christ. And on the other side of the equation, we have people so lacking in grace and forgiveness and restoration. You know who I want to forgive like? I want to forgive people like the woman caught in adultery forgave people. Think about it. Think about how she forgave people after her moment. Think about the sinful woman who comes in and anoints Jesus' feet. I want to love people like she loved people after she left there, having been restored. I love the portrayal of Mary Magdalene in the Chosen series because she was so messed up. And God restored her through the words of Christ. And I love the way they portray her as, I was so messed up. I love it. One line she tells Peter, I could tell you things that would make your blood turn to ice. And he kind of goes, what? But yet she is so portrayed as so loving. That's what I want to be. I want to balance out this equation. I have this example of the cross, the grace and mercy and love who saved me from the wrath of God, who made me holy and blameless in his sight. And he says, therefore, go, walk equally, axiomatically, like I loved you, with humbleness, with gentleness, with long-suffering patience, accepting one another because you just love them, rushing to keep the unity, the oneness of the Spirit. That's who I want to be. I want to read you some lines from a song. It's from the song Truth Be Told by Matthew West. You've heard this song before. The chorus says, I say I'm fine, yeah, I'm fine, oh, I'm fine, hey, I'm fine, but I'm not. I'm broken. And when it's out of control, just say it's under control, but it's not, and you know it. I don't know why it's so hard to admit it when being honest is the only way to fix it. There's no failure, no fall. There's no sin you don't already know, so let the truth be told. Second verse says, there's a sign on the door that says, come as you are, but I doubt it. Because if we lived like it was true, every Sunday morning pew would be crowded. Let me read that line one more time. There's a sign on the door that says, come as you are, but I doubt it. Because if we live like it was true, every Sunday morning pew would be crowded. what if we became a church that just took these 6 verses in the letter to the Ephesians, and this became our calling, our mantra? We would not be able to fit everyone that wants to be a part of us into this building. How are you doing on this axiom? Are you living out this calling with humility and gentleness? In patience, are you accepting one another in love? Are you rushing to keep the unity of the Spirit? If so, then we're balancing this thing out, and we'll do beautiful things. But when we have a sign on the door that says, "Come as you are," but we don't treat people that way, we'll always be fighting. We'll always be competing. We'll always be bickering. We'll always be grumbling. And the church will never be effective in that environment. I'm going to play this song. I'm going to play the video of this song. I've told you the words. Listen to it. The words are pretty clear and pretty good. So y'all just listen to this song.